well, McGregor has a good chin. You know, always win, whatever, but he had experience sports, both of them. MMA requires
maybe because of the hand or maybe because
everything about McGregor.
Too, it's the fight.
1% puncher's chance.
Conor McGregor will not land a single punch against Floyd Mayweather. Not one punch.
We'll keep that tape. He does have a dangerous left hand. I'm with Stephen A. with that 1% puncher's chance. It takes one good shot to make history. So you could argue the UFC and Conor have everything to gain in this bout. Clearly, Oscar De La Hoya is not a fan of this crossover fight, telling boxing purists not to spend their money on the fight. Here's Dana White addressing that shade.
The thing that upset me about Oscar De La Hoya is he comes out and starts asking fans not to buy the fight. What? What is that? First of all, number one. Number two, it's an incredible opportunity for fans of combat sports for the end of this year. There's so many great fights, and because sometimes there's big runs and big gaps between big fights. We have nothing but a great lineup at the end of this year, and everybody should be thrilled, including the boxing guys and Oscar De La Hoya.
Max, I'm a UFC junkie, but this is a boxing match.
Me too. Yep.
So what does this mean for boxing as a sport?
Let me tell you what's happening here. People love boxing. I do this thought experiment with people to prove that it's your favorite sport. You come to a street corner. Two guys are playing pickup basketball over here. A guy's playing stickball over here. There's a tennis match, and over there, there's a fist fight. Where's the crowd? It's around the fist fight because it's simply more compelling. Fighting is more compelling because it's not a metaphor for anything else. It's literal. You know, the imposition of will is literal. I hit the other guy goes down, his brain tells his legs get up, can't do it. It's just more compelling. But if you redid the thought experiment, and now it's Tiger Woods putting the golf ball, and it's LeBron playing Kobe one-on-one, etc., and it's two no-names in a fist fight, still there's some people around the fist fight. That's how awesome boxing and MMA are. But now the crowd is differently distributed, right? Now more people are, because we sell sports the way we understand the world as people through narrative, through story. Stories are only as interesting as the characters are compelling. Do you know the characters? Are you emotionally invested in them? Do you know what's at stake for them? Do you know the huge obstacles they have to overcome? How big are those obstacles, right? So when people understand the characters and what's at stake for them, they love boxing. But boxing doesn't have a Dana White. And as a result, not enough people know about enough of the characters in boxing. In fact, post-Pacquiao, once Floyd beat Pacquiao, Triple G is too big for Floyd, the only other combat sport participant that people really know and are invested in at the moment, since John Jones has had his problems, is Conor McGregor. So you know Floyd Mayweather, you know Conor McGregor, and you want to see a fight, but you are mostly interested in seeing fights, at least mainstream is, between characters that you know. These are the two characters you know. It happens to be they weigh about the same. They're about the same size, so they can fight. What this fight demonstrates is the appetite that people have for combat sports, which is enormous, and also the scarcity, the paucity of boxers that the mainstream public knows, precisely because in boxing there is no one brand or promotional outfit or tour on the level of the UFC. There is no Dana White in boxing. If there was, boxing would be in better shape.
Here's the deal. This fight is a great, great thing for boxing. And here's why. Because it brings attention to the sport in ways that we've lost an appreciation for. Allow me to explain. You got Conor McGregor versus Floyd Money Mayweather. That is clearly an exhibition. Well, why do we call it an exhibition? Because we have to have stuff to compare it to. Max Kellerman, we just started off this show talking about some of the great fighters that have existed in the sport of boxing. Largely, for the most part, we don't talk about those dudes anymore. Why? Because the sport has cheated us by delaying what we all want and what we all covet. This is why we have to give major props to Dana White, along with Floyd and Conor McGregor for making, and Al Heyman for that matter, for making this kind of stuff happen when the people are clamoring for it. And what does it also have us doing, Max? We got Andre Ward and Kovalev fighting this weekend. That's a monster fight for the light heavyweight championship of the world. We're looking forward to that. We got Canelo versus Triple G September 16th. We're definitely looking forward to that. We just saw Errol Spence Jr., my favorite, going up against Kell Brook, okay? We definitely appreciated that. the kind of things.
Stephen A. Joshua Klitschko for the heavyweight title.
That's right. That's right. Even though, again, that was in England.
Been a great year.
It doesn't involve an American. Still a great fight, but it doesn't involve an American. But I'm just talking about for America right now. The reality is clear. Having a fight like this forces us to pay attention to the sport of boxing, what it's lacking, to the sport of the UFC and why it's elevating in popularity. It forces us to pay attention to what one sport is doing, what one sport is not doing. And most importantly, it reminds the power brokers, the influence makers, or the decision makers rather, to literally pay attention to getting back to giving people what they want when they want it, as opposed to delaying it for years. That's what this fight does, and that's why we have to appreciate it.
And let's talk about Dana White. That's why I said boxing doesn't have a Dana White, and therefore people don't know enough of the characters. Let me tell you what Dana White's a boxing fan. Before big fights, Dana called, we talk about fights, about boxing. He loves boxing. That's why, he respected Canelo and Triple G that date. He's going to be at that fight. I'm sure he's certainly going to be watching that fight and very interested in it because he loves the fights. And as a guy from that background, he looked at boxing and said, as a combat sports lover, man, look at all these mistakes that are made in this industry.
Well, Max, when he talked
to Fertitas into buying Zuffa, into buying the UFC, he used boxing as an example of what to avoid.
Max,
so
we'll get into Dana in a little bit.
We're doing a whole segment on Dana. So let's get back to Oscar and what Oscar had to say. Because you and I both know when Oscar came out and said it, this is the one part that we got to give Dana credit for when he said this about Oscar. As much as I appreciate where Oscar's coming from, and he's right because it doesn't compare as a boxing match to what we're going to see with Triple G versus Canelo, the reality is clear. If Oscar De La Hoya had an opportunity to do this fight, he would not have turned it down. He would have jumped at it to make this money. So it's one thing for him to say, okay, this is not a fight that really should happen. It's a discredit to the sport as far as Mayweather is concerned. There's some validity to that because the greatest in the sport shouldn't be given a novice an opportunity to step into the ring with him. You can make that argument, but it's false for Oscar to sit up there, or wrong rather for Oscar to sit up there and say, you shouldn't buy the fight. Right. That's excessive. That really was.
Oscar is a tremendous success story in boxing because here was a fighter who not only made, tons of money as a fighter and was a great fighter who did not avoid the best fighters of his era, but then he went on to become a promoter. While he was still an active fighter, he took his destiny into his own hands and created this incredibly successful business, and now he's among the top promoters in the sport. That's an amazing success story. And so in this case, you have to take it with a grain of salt because he is not the promoter here. Were he the promoter, he'd be singing a different tune. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't believe what he's saying. In other words, sometimes your interests, your financial interests, happen to coincide with your actual opinion. And I believe this is one of those instances for Oscar De La Hoya. You're absolutely right. I mean, you can't prove a counterfactual, but I totally agree with you. If Oscar could participate financially in this fight, he'd be singing a very different tune. He's not. So you take that with a grain of salt. But he believes what he's saying, and what he's saying is in his own self-interest. That is a happy coincidence for Oscar.
Okay.
All right, gentlemen, this poll, I'm very much looking forward to this. So now that the date's set and the two stars will fight, we want to hear from you guys. Who you got in the super fight, Floyd or Conor? Go on Twitter, vote. We'll have those results in the show. I want to see how many of you are actually picking McGregor.
May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I actually think First Take should change that question.
Okay, what would you like
we all know everybody's going to say Mayweather should win. Mm-hmm. What they should be asking is either how much of a chance do you give McGregor, is 0% or 1%, or what round you think Mayweather's going to take him out in. That's what you should be asking. Just a thought.
Stephen A., stay tuned.
Does McGregor go the distance?
It's closer than you think. And don't worry, we can work on those poll questions because we've got a few shows moving forward. But, guys, a lot more to get into like this. LeVar has always been the showman in the Ball family, but don't miss the video that could now put Lonzo ahead of his old man. And Michael Bennett compares a current NFL player to the great Muhammad Ali. Find out who he's giving high praise to when First Take rolls on.